Kirby's Adventure was first released on the NES in 1993. Initially, it was conceived as a port of 1992's Game Boy original Kirby's Dream Land. However, legendary director Masahiro Sakurai felt that the NES's player base were higher in skill level than the Game Boy original would demand of them. With this in mind, he moved ahead with the creation of an overhauled sequel, which took the best parts of the original and added in so much of what makes up Kirby's DNA to this day. Almost 3 decades later, just how does this formative platforming experience fare? Find out in this review. Before you do, however, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications every time I upload, as well as leaving a like. Let's get into it. So I know I touched on this in the intro, but it really is incredible just how much of what makes Kirby was introduced in this experience. Whether it's gameplay stuff like his slide attack and the iconic debut of his signature copy mechanic, or even his pink coloring. Yeah, that's right, there was a whole year of history where everyone just assumed Kirby was white, but no, turns out he was pink all along. J.K. Rowling's got nothing on Sakurai, truly. Back to the copy mechanic, it can't be stressed just how amazing this is. There's 24 of these Kirby can get by swallowing certain enemies, and they're all so much damned fun to use. And the genius of this is that you're never overwhelmed by some convoluted moveset because you only have one of these active at a time. I do kinda wish you could stockpile an extra one or something just to swap between them, but the game moves at a pace where there's always another enemy to swallow and use the ability of. My favorites are abilities like the UFO, the hammer, and the wheel, but almost every ability here is good except for the ball. I also love the sleep power because it's actually a handicap which makes you think twice about your instinct to just swallow everything inside. And Kirby's other move of being able to float around and expel air at enemies is also great to control. I also appreciate that if you swallow and don't digest an enemy, you actually can't float. It's frustrating, but it actually means that pits and stuff can pose something of a threat if you're not careful. And the float may seem overpowered, but the level takes that into consideration, with plenty of airborne enemies and obstacles placed to ensure that whichever route you take, there's always something challenging awaiting you. Being released in '93, Kirby's Adventure definitely had the benefit of being on the tail end of the NES release cycle. The programmers and designers had the opportunity to learn from what did and didn't work about other games on the system, as well as kinda looking ahead in a sense at what systems like the SNES were capable of. This is evident in the physics of the game. The way Kirby controls is just phenomenal. For me, it's kinda reminiscent of Super Mario Bros. 3, but without Kirby having f***ing oil on his shoes like Mario always just seems to. The graphics are also some of the best I've seen on this system. The colors are pastely, but in my mind, this whole depiction feels synonymous with Kirby. There's a lot of vibrancy in the environments, the enemies, and the cutscenes. And that's not even touching on the level of care put into the sprite animations. Everything's so expressive and wholesome. The soundtrack is twinkly and fast-paced. I wouldn't call it anything groundbreaking, but its retro feel and overwhelming positivity no doubt make it really nostalgic for a lot of people. The only real presentation woe here is that when there's a lot going on screen, there can be a drop in frame rate. It's really not too bad though. And if anything, I'm just kinda impressed that this game runs at all on an NES. Level to level, the experience here flows pretty naturally. There's a lot of fun to be had in these well-designed ROMs. They're short and addictive in a way that keeps you coming back for just one more level. There's also weird sections that change things up, like the occasional freefall that really puts Kirby's float mechanic to good use. I also really appreciate that the levels actually get pretty tough, as do the boss fights. You'll die more than you might expect, but I actually don't dislike this. I'd just recommend playing with restore points if you have that option and want something more in line with a modern pace. Even if you don't, the save points here are decently forgiving for the era. There's also intermission style minigames like the crane game, which are actually pretty fun and realistic, in addition to the really fun timing based jump at the end of each level. Getting it right feels amazing, and it gets you a 1-up. The boss fights are really well done here. I can't explain it, but it almost feels like these things anticipate your movement because of the level of care that's put into their movements. They're never impossible, but they're actually pretty darn challenging the further you progress into the game. And aesthetically and mechanically, they're all super distinct. And obviously with this being a Nintendo game, it's pretty light on story threads, but what is here is a lot of fun. Kirby has to bring back the Star Rod that's been stolen by the mischievous King DDD, but gradually he realizes there's something way more sinister at play. I appreciate the use of a slight twist in this story, and it actually helps flesh out the gameplay nicely. All in all, Kirby's adventure didn't just escape the shadow of its predecessor, but undoubtedly eclipsed it. This is a fascinating example of a late release gem on the original NES, and worth checking out for anybody who enjoys the platformer genre. I'd give this game a 6 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, I'd really appreciate you taking the time to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, comment what you thought of the game and my review, as well as dropping a like. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one.